Fola, you say I should talk about mediation. I want to believe that that would have been part of the course that you are running.
No, not really, ma'am. Just basically to just expound on the future and the benefits of them taking mediation as a practice.
Okay.
Exactly, and the vision of what you see as far as where mediation is going to. And with your permission, ma, for the benefit, because like I told them, like I said, told my team members that this golden nuggets are going to share. It's not only going to be, it's going to be for the world to see. So as I speak right now, it's streaming live on YouTube for everybody
Oh
to
my
see after
goodness.
today. Yes, ma. So no, you won't understand that. Okay, ma, over to you, ma.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. So I want to imagine that you must have spoken about the advantages of mediation.
Yes, ma.
The first one of which is that, you know, it cuts the dockets of the courts for court-connected matters, and even for matters that ordinarily would have gone to court, but then opt for mediation. So, I mean, that's one huge advantage, because for those of us that are lawyers and are practicing, because mediation is not only for lawyers, it's for all professions, actually. You can be a mediator. It doesn't matter what profession you are. All you have to do is just get good training, and, you know, you get the skills, and you can practice as a mediator. But for those of us that are lawyers, we know that in court, we have so many cases. You know, the judges are overwhelmed. In fact, I'm told now that before you can get a date in Supreme Court, the earliest date is like 2027 or 2028 or something like that. That's just to show you the volume of cases. And most of these cases, you know, from what we have seen, really should not be in the court. They don't belong to the court. There are some that, yes, you know, maybe bordering on contractual rights and all that, but even on contractual rights, there's a way that you can, you know, sort some aspect of it out. But, or maybe criminal cases and so on. Okay, yeah, so maybe those ones should go to court, you know, to be determined. But we know that mediation simply is, you know, a third party sitting with the parties involved in the disputes, and helping them to hear each other talk in an effort to be able to help them resolve what the issue or the impasse is. Okay, that's really your role. It's not that the two parties cannot talk to each other or haven't been talking to each other, but they're not listening to each other. One person is just trying to, you know, to override the other and, you know, marshal his points across and all that. But when there's a mediator who acts as an intermediary between the two, then the mediator helps them to hear each other, helps them to arrange maybe their points or marshal their points in such a way that there's a genuine understanding between both parties. They begin to see, you know, where either has gone wrong, or, you know, whether you are right and you want to give some concession or whatever. And so you help them to settle a dispute. Now, as to where mediation is going and why I think mediation is the giant that is going to explode very soon. Most disputes or most conflicts come about as a result of lack of understanding of the action of the other party, or maybe one party, you do have an agreement or an understanding, and then one party decides to renege, and then of course you have a dispute. Or maybe there's a genuine issue, you know, that happens. I mean, like COVID, for instance, nobody expected that, you know, we would have COVID, but COVID did happen, just like life happens. And you can't begin to imagine all the kinds of disruptions and, you know, issues that in transactions that people have had because of COVID. And you find out that going to court is just, it's good, you know, because then you're going to court to say that the judge should determine, you know, who is right and who is wrong. But the issue is that in court, the judge can only look at what you have submitted, the papers you have submitted in front of him or her, and then decide on that. But in mediation, you get an opportunity to actually tell the other party so many other things in between. It's not just about right, wrong, or black and red. In between, there's some gray. And so when you come together and you sit down and you discuss in mediation with the third party, you're able to offer to the other side, insights, things that probably the other side didn't know about, and which really maybe affected the dispute, or affected the transaction rather, and caused a dispute. Okay, so there's a better understanding. And with that, you're able to give, you're able to concede, you're able to concede to some things, and moving forward, be able to settle. Now, we know most times, even sometimes when you go to court, and in between the adjournments and all that, you find that parties reach out to each other. Some that have the understanding, they reach out to each other, and at the end of the day, they sit down and they discuss. And more often than not, they're able to settle because they have a better understanding. And that is why I think, for the future, mediation is it. Because really, as human beings, we just have to communicate. We have to talk. And that's essentially what we're doing in mediation. We're telling each other what the matter is. We're telling each other why this was done and why this was not done, for the other side to have a better understanding of what happened and why, there's a dispute, or why you're where you are, why there's a conflict. So how can that not be good? How can that not be good for us human beings? It's just the best way. We need to sit down, talk, understand each other, rather than, flexing muscles or pulling right and wrong, which will get us nowhere. Or you have the option of going to court where, a judge just tells you, go and do this. I always give this example about financials. Maybe you owe somebody money. For want of a better figure, I say 100 naira. And you go before, maybe the matter goes to court, and you go before the judge, and the judge says, okay, go and pay this 100 naira. That is my decision. You owe this 100 naira. You borrowed it. You said you would pay. Go and pay. Now, go and pay, and it gives you a date. Maybe it gives you a date 2 weeks from that time. Now, you know that you're expecting some money in another month. And you know that in that 2 weeks, that's the other party, you know that you cannot pay that 100 naira in 2 weeks. But you've been handed a judgment by a third party who just looked at what the transaction is, didn't ask you whether you can pay, you've admitted you're owing, but didn't ask you whether you can pay, didn't ask you how you want to pay, didn't ask you, what happened that you cannot pay, and just says, go and pay. So definitely from the get-go, you're going to renege. You're not going to be able to fulfill that judgment. You're not going to be able to carry it through. But if you had sat around in mediation and you agree that, oh yes, I'm owing blah, 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 and the other side says he wants his money, and then you say, okay, I want to pay, but look, I cannot pay you within 2 weeks. I know I have some money coming, in another month, and I can pay you in that whole month. Or you say, okay, I owe you 100 naira. I have 10 naira. If you want me to pay in 2 weeks, I can put a down payment of 10 naira. And then you agree, subsequently how you want to pay. It makes better sense. It quickens the whole process. You're able to sort out things amicably, because the other side then knows that, it's not that you don't want to pay, but, you have this and these circumstances that are preventing you from honoring your obligations, and it's not deliberate. So he gives you a concession and says, okay, if this is what you're saying, in a month, I'll get my money, that's fine. Rather than you get this judgment from court, 2 weeks, and he cannot get his money. So I've just given you these examples once again to buttress the fact that nothing beats communication. I don't know what is inside you until you tell me what is inside you. I'm not a mind reader, okay? And I need to understand, I need to know why you have done what you have done. I need to understand why you have taken the action that you have taken. Maybe if I understand, then I will better be able to appreciate your position and then give concessions. You just never know. Okay, but if we go on with this bitterness and we're fighting and we're doing this, we're not going to get anywhere. Even our politicians, look at them. Oh, they make pronouncements, they fight, they do this. At the end of the day, they still have to sit down with each other. They still have to sit down with the other side and say, okay, so how do we move forward? What do we want to do? Because communication is just the key. We have to be able to reveal to each other, the reasons why we have an impasse and what we're looking for moving forward. Besides that, it saves time. I go to court and I'm there for the next 3 years, yet I go to mediation and I have maybe 1 or 2 sessions and we're done. And the good thing about mediation is that even if we do not settle, because it's not all mediations that settle, by the way, even if we don't settle, I have a better understanding of why, you did X, Y, Z. It will even help me in my other relationships or other transactions that are similar to know that, okay, you don't have to do this. This is usually what happens. Moving forward, you have a better understanding, even if you don't settle. But in most cases, people are open to settlement because what they want is just to get this impasse behind them and move forward. Some have been with it for such a long time that, when they now see somebody that says, okay, you can employ this process and hopefully, you get something good out of it, they're willing and they're ready. So, I don't know if I've been able to sell mediation to you, there's also the issue of relationships. Mediation looks beyond, the current relationship that you have, okay? It helps you to mend your relationships. It helps because you've spoken to the other side, you've heard him or her, you genuinely believe that, okay, what he or her is putting on the table is the real reason, is why there's an impasse. And from there, you can move forward. There's so many advantages to mediation, some of which I know you would have been taught, that you cannot but accept that it is the future, at least for settlement of conflicts.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ma. So one of the reasons, like I told them before I came in, is that engagement really is a strength of clarity. So because I've always had conversations with, especially the younger ones coming into mediation, there's this question that always comes up. They believe mediation, the practice of mediation belongs to a particular age grade in view of the people that come into mediation, and they sometimes feel that if they're not going to come into mediation, how are they going to break that circle in view of the fact that the people that are very active in mediation are in a particular age grade? So that question is always coming up. I would like to get your reaction to that. And before that, please, if you have any question you want to ask, let's take advantage of this unique opportunity. So I would also unmute you to also ask the question. It's always better that way, but you have to please just keep it short. Okay, so yes, ma'am, I'll take you first now.
Okay, thank you very much, Fola. Yes, I've also been asked this question, and what I always say is that, to start with, don't bar yourself from the process by thinking that because you are young, you are not going to be able to practice mediation. There are all sorts of cases that come into mediation, all sorts of cases. Yes, there is some truth and there's some wisdom in saying that, there's some cases that the younger people probably would not be able to take on in mediation. But that's just a small fraction. And those cases will probably involve cases where you have, really older people involved in the dispute, you don't need to, it's not rocket science. You don't need to be told that, you can't sit 2 elderly people who are, maybe the age of your parents or above your parents' ages and say, okay, because you're a professional mediator, you want to conduct the mediation. I'm not saying you cannot conduct it, you're professionally qualified, but you see, it takes something away from it. Like I said earlier, the difference between mediation, yes, you have a third party in mediation and a judge sitting and deciding on your case. There's a bit of difference there. The judge, once he has his wig and gown on, even if he's just 10 years at the bar and he's, deciding cases for his grandfathers. He's a judge. But you as a mediator, you're sitting there, they can see you, you're young, you probably are not too old at the bar if you're a lawyer, and it doesn't help their confidence, let me put it that way, to be able to sit with you, not because you're not professionally qualified, but it's just something about us human beings. And mediation is a very people oriented process. Okay, you are bearing everything when you come to mediation. There's nothing hidden. Nobody is speaking for you. It's not that you have a lawyer who's speaking for you. You are there to have your say. It's like your day in court. So you're giving the opportunity. So, parties are fully involved in mediation. So if you then have, parties that even before the mediation has started are thinking, how can this child who didn't even know when I built, who hadn't even been born when I built this property, now want to help me decide between me and my friend who should have it, and that's why we say, there's so many mediators. You can consult, you can find out, you have this matter, speak to older mediators, they can co-mediate with you if you really want to be, because I want to believe that younger people also must learn, and gain the experience. So you can have a co-mediator, maybe somebody much older, somebody more experienced, maybe in that particular field, or like I said, if it involves older parties, somebody much older that, that they will not frown at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Okay, so Lolia, could you please unmute yourself and take your question and ask your question, please?
Okay. Good afternoon, Mrs. Kolade.
Good afternoon.
It's so nice to finally meet you here. Thanks for taking the time to come and talk to us.
Thank you.
So my question basically is with regards to communication. You said mediation is a way of opening up the lines of communication. And I was wondering where there's a dispute between two parties that have not agreed or have not been communicating basically. If after you've had your first session of mediation, they decide to meet outside of mediation and settle their problem, how is that looked at in mediation? Is that still a win, or is that discouraged because you want to settle everything in the mediation session, or how does it work?
No, it's definitely a win. It's definitely a win. In fact, when you conduct a mediation and you're about to close it because the parties just can't seem to agree, usually I tell them to keep talking, keep talking to themselves. So if after the mediation they're able to meet and agree and settle it, it's brilliant. It's a plus for you.
Okay.
They will still come back and tell you to help them write the agreement, and probably help you file it and all that. So you will still know about it. You still get to know about it.
Okay.
But it's good. And you see, again, that's the beauty of mediation. I'm sure the mediation that you conducted is what opened up yes, the lines of communication, the possibilities, the fact that, look, this is a do or die thing. We really can't settle it if we want to, So they go away with that. And most times you find out that, one will reach out to the other and say, well, let's talk about this again. Let's see whether we can really agree. It happens quite a lot, actually.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lolia. Nanchan, could you please unmute yourself and ask your question? Please keep it short.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am privileged to meet you, ma. I'm very, very privileged. I happen to be a grandson, maybe possibly, but I am really excited to be here. My question is, some of us have taken trainings in ADR long ago, but we never had this opportunity to put them into practice. And now we're trying to revive these ADR qualities in us. So my question is, as beginners, what do you advise in us to, how do we go about acquiring practical knowledge of this mediation? Because I feel it's very, very critical. That's my question.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nan Chang. I hope I pronounced that very well. Yes, the way that I see with what we have now, you see, everybody looks at the LMDC, that is the multi-door courthouses, you know, in the different states, and they think, oh, maybe that's where I should get onto and be a neutral and all that. But it's not the only place. Like Fola told you, it's good to have a mentor. That is somebody who is seasoned or who has been practicing, because through them you can, in fact, most times they will talk to the parties that they have and ask that, you know, you're sitting, or just say, you know, we're having a co-mediator. You don't have to pay the co-mediator, but the co-mediator is sitting in. And then you sit in the mediations that they have, you know, you won't say anything, but you'll be there maybe writing things or making notes and so on. And from there, you will get the practical experience. And then aside from that, even you on your own, depending on where you're working and depending on the situations that you come across, you can encourage mediation. You can encourage, even if it's in your place of work, you know, we have workplace mediation. You can encourage mediation. If there's a dispute or whatever, you can go up to your line manager and say, look, why don't we, you know, bring these two people together and see whether they can discuss, and, you know, a third party sits in, that sort of thing. And from there, you're gaining experience.
Okay, then.
Whether that answers your
Yes,
question.
okay, by extension, because Nanchang has asked this question once, but I would like to hear your reaction from your perspective. He is based in Cardinal, and mediation is, well, is basically just trying to speak up, for want of a better way. So is it disadvantaged, or is that an advantage for him to actually leverage on? Because he's basically trying to build a career for himself in mediation in Cardinal. I would like to hear your reaction on that.
I would say it's an advantage, you know, that you should build on. If you go into, I must sound a note of a warning though, that mediation can be a hard sell. Mediation can be, because people have different notions about, you know, about the process. Some will say, oh, that means I will tell them everything about me. Oh, you know, they resist. It can be a hard sell. But our job as mediators is to make them see that, look, it's better for you. You don't know the underlying reasons why this other person took this action. And he's not telling you, but at mediation, you will get to know. You'll get to know. So that's that. Now, for Kaduna, I think that it's an advantage because there aren't too many people in it. And if you push it, it's like any other profession. If you push in, you get there first and you do it well, there's no way that it won't be an advantage to you. That would be my take. Yes.
Okay, yeah. Thank you so much. Ayofe, could you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
All right. Good afternoon, Ma, and thank you for the session and for sharing. So when Mr. Fala was introducing you, he introduced you as a veteran in mediation. So I would just like to ask that in your experience, what are the telltale signs of disputes that wouldn't just bend to mediation, you know, that you would have seen from the onset, and how do you communicate that to parties and or clients?
Well, there's really no dispute that I think I would shy away from, except those that have an illegal portion of it. I mean, if I'm having a mediation and I'm doing a caucus meeting, which is a private meeting, let's say between manufacturers of, okay, let me give a scenario. Maybe manufacturer manufactured a good and some other person took it and, you know, died from taking it or something like that. You know, and then I'm having caucus meetings with the manufacturer, and he tells me that actually to be very honest, those drugs would have expired by the date we sold them, but we just had to sell them because we needed the money or something like that. If I have that kind of revelation in mediation, it would be a red flag for me. It would be a red flag for me because I think it would be unfair to the other side not to know this. That's one, not to know what has been revealed to me. Because obviously the reason they had an impasse is probably because they're arguing that the drugs were okay, it wasn't our drug that caused the illness or whatever, and then the manufacturer reveals to me that this and this is what happened. So it would be unfair on the other side for me to have that kind of information and not be able to reveal it, because I can assure you the manufacturer is going to tell me not to reveal it. And in mediation, you can't reveal what a party tells you not to reveal. You have to reveal only what they ask you to reveal to the other side after the caucus meetings. So I think in that kind of matter, it will send a red flag. And well, I mean, we're talking theoretically now, and there'll probably be other issues, surrounding it. But for me, I'd probably recuse myself. Okay. But having said that, there might be other revelations, even from the other side, that can help the mediation to settle. And then depending on, what the manufacturer is also willing to offer, you might be able to settle it. But for me, yes, that kind of case, I would think again.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm Precious. Before I take you, let me take Adenike. Adenike, could you please unmute yourself? Then after Adenike, I'll take Precious, and I think I saw Darius' hand up.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh, Adenike, I knew you were the one. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Very nice to meet you, Mrs. Yinka. And I just wanted to say also to Fola, the last 3 weeks has been phenomenal. This is my first live, but the last 2 have been really great, and it's a privilege to meet you, Ma. And I think based on the previous question, it was actually in line with what I was going into, that what would you say has been, from your experience, one of the top 2, maybe 1 or 2 skills you feel every mediator needs to have and develop, because you've seen the impact it has either in resolving cases or even something every mediator must avoid in terms of when they go through that process? And if you don't mind, I have a second one, which is, do you have any particular area you are passionate about when it comes to mediation? We all know Fola is commercial, but I'm just curious if by virtue of who you are, you actually, certain types of mediation appeals more to you.
Okay, to answer your first question, I don't know which you answer first now, or can you come again with the first question?
The first one is, what would you say are 1 or 2 top skills every mediator needs to have?
Top skills.
In terms of when they need to.
I always tell people, if you're not a patient person, it's either you get out of mediation or you go and develop how to be patient. For me, over the years, you just have to be patient. And I think Fola mentioned it once, because I think he was in on one of my cases, and he had thought that the parties would not settle, after when we had a kind of little break. Fola, I don't know if you can remember, he was like, oh, those people, why are they talking about? I don't think they will get it. And I said, you just watch. The tide is going to turn. And it really did. And I think what helped me was, which will be a second skill, is my communication and questioning skills. You have to ask relevant questions. You have to ask questions that will make the party rethink. You have to ask questions that will make the party shift. Sometimes the questions might not even be connected to the impasse, But all you're trying to do is, to tell this person that, look, you're here, you've submitted to mediation. Yes, we've been talking, you've heard a lot. Think, as you people say, think outside the box. I don't know whether that's relevant, but ask a question that will make the person rethink. So communication and questioning skills, very key, very key. I've seen mediators that are just asking questions for the sake of asking, and they're repeating themselves, and they're not moving the parties forward. In fact, I was involved in one recently, and I was so disappointed because they had the field. They had the field to the mediator had the field to ask questions that could have moved the parties forward, but mediator just didn't. So I think for me, based on my experience, questioning skills, communication skills, and patience.
Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Great.
And
yeah.
Sorry, I just want to say about the second one, about the area you were most passionate about. I was just curious.
Okay. Like Fola, I think I'm a bit different. I like money, but I'm not going to say just commercial, because it's the commercial people never like to submit to mediation because they feel that they're going to reveal a lot. So to get them to come to the mediation table is always, almost a tug of war. But for other matters, yes, they are usually more amenable, to coming to mediation. But I don't know. I don't know whether I have a favorite, but I know I have an area that I really usually don't like to do, and that is family mediation.
That's actually the area she's looking at, because I don't like family mediation too. I told her.
I don't like
mediation. So I was hoping I'll hear maybe somebody else say. When you said it, I was like,
it comes with a lot of emotions.
So much.
It comes with a lot of I don't know, too many things, and a lot of revelations, and if you're somebody that is empathizes a lot with your parties, and you're touched by what you hear, you won't want to take on such cases. You won't want to.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mrs. Kolade. Precious, we're going to take your questions, but I'm so excited. So, I have, in mediation, I have my yin and I have my yang. So I have Mrs. Kolade and I have Mr. Adeyemi A. Those are my two top mentors when it comes to mediation. So a bit of a background into Mr. Adeyemi A. He was one of the teachers that taught me mediation advocacy in 2015. I can remember when he finished, I just walked up to him. I was like, sir, I'm desirous of going into mediation to actually be like you. And I know what he did. He gave me his card. I don't know whether he can remember. He gave me his card and said, you know what, Fala, whenever you have any issues, reach out to me and all that. And since then, I've maintained the relationship of staying in touch with him. So here's one unique thing about Mr. Akinsanya that I like. And maybe that part aligns with my personality. He has a unique and a different approach to the concept of mediation. I heard of two things I also want him to also discuss with us. The first time I heard of authentic mediation. That was the first time I heard of authentic mediation from Mr. Akinsanya. First time. Second time, the second word he always says again is the value chain. The value chain of mediation. Then the third, there was one example he gave, and that example has always resonated anytime I talk. He likened mediation to the diagnosis a doctor gives, where if a doctor wants to treat an ailment, it goes to the root cause to know what the particular problem is, and that is essentially what he does. So for those that don't know what avant-garde means, that is a kind of approach he has to mediation. So most times when I come up with just one idea that I feel, God, this is so unconventional, this is so distinct, I'm always going to Mr. Akinsanya, I'm having this idea, what do you think? So I'm super honored to have, so basically what I'm doing in line is to open up my powerhouse. Everybody has that powerhouse that they go to So I'm basically opening up my powerhouse to everyone to see that, okay, when you see me doing all this, saying all these are my yin and yang. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'm super uber excited to bring the first leg of my mentors to you in the person of Mr. Adeyemi Akinsanya. Please take advantage of this moment. Take advantage or ask any question you want, and he will definitely answer. So over to you, sir. Super excited to have you here. As always, I'm listening unfiltered with my pen and paper.
First things first, since this seminar is about making money, I've checked my bank account, there's no alert.
Exactly.
And when I spoke to Mrs. Kolade too, she said, no alert. So I said, I think I need to leave the meeting because it's about making money. We can't be doing this free of charge.
Especially from a commercial mediator.
Yeah, so please take note. I'll be forwarding my account details later.
No problem.
All right. Secondly, I also want to say this, that the expression authentic mediation, I don't know whether I have the copyright to it, although I use it, and I've grabbed it and I've used it. But actually, it's part of a twin use, which I'd like to copyright, and I would appreciate that people don't just jump onto it without fully understanding it. Authentic mediation that works. They go together. And it is because I believe that there is mediation and there is mediation. Now, mediation that works is mediation that has certain characteristics in it, inbuilt to it. And the most important one, because I don't want to speak for 30 minutes, the most important thing about authentic mediation, or mediation that works, or mediation that is authentic, not just regular mediation, is the one aspect that is difficult for especially those mediators coming from a law background. And what is that? The power of resolution must reside in the parties. The power of resolution must reside in the parties. The parties must never abdicate, nor be allowed to abdicate that power, not to the mediator, nor even to their own representatives or advocates or counsel. Now, it is not as simple as it seems, because it is not unusual for you in a mediation to have people ask you easily, what do you think? Give us some suggestions. And one would readily fall into the temptation to, in fact, give suggestions. The second thing, therefore, that goes with that is that the mediator, as much as one does not want to be religious or spiritual or mystic, you cannot do mediation unless you practice acquiring the virtue of humility. When you are humble, it is easy for you to not feel that the world must revolve around you, or that you must be the one who has the answers. It also helps you to see others as capable of giving the answers. When you look at your parties in a mediation, you must regard them with the highest esteem, no matter how illiterate, no matter how inexperienced, no matter how qualified they seem. You must almost regard them with the highest esteem. You must consider them capable of resolution. You must consider them capable of finding the answers to their own problems and you must consider them able to do so without your help. Now, what you do, when I say without your help, I mean without you having to do it for them. Therefore, the skills of a mediator is his ability to empower them to make that resolution. Okay? That is part of your skill as a mediator. If you're a good peacemaker, you are able to convince people to settle or to reconcile. It doesn't make you a good mediator. It makes you a good quarrel solver. It gives you a good peacemaker. You know how to fight, stop it from fighting. But mediation is a forensic art, is professional, and the work of the mediator is to empower the parties. And in doing so, therefore, the mediator also must be able, when you are at a table with 2 or 3 or 4 parties, you must be able to recognize where there is a power imbalance between them. You must recognize where there is a power imbalance between them, because if the power is imbalanced, then one party is going to be either intimidated or maneuvered or manipulated. Now, the work of the mediator is to play referee, umpire. You are the bridge between them. And therefore, the skill of a mediator is to identify where there's a power imbalance. And of course, along with that is that his skills include the ability to balance the power. Because if you don't balance the playing field, they will not have the powers to decide. So those are some of the things some of the powers you have. Now, one of the greatest skills, one of the greatest qualities in recognizing power imbalance or even understanding these things is in your ability to ask questions properly. Now, in litigation, a litigation lawyer asks questions either in examination or cross-examination. He has one thing. He wants to know what to reply to. He wants to know what to counter. He wants to know what to destroy, so that what he has said may stand and he may win. It is not the same with the mediator. The mediator listens with a view to understand what the real issue is. A young friend of mine gave me a statement which I have borrowed, and I told her I have seized it. She said, when you question properly, you will come to know that the matter is not the matter. Let me say that again. She says, when you learn to question properly and you listen effectively, you will come to know that the matter is not the matter. And that usually is the crux of the matter. You need to find out what is the matter. What they say to you is the matter is not the matter. Many other factors come in that are present. And you as the mediator must learn to recognize those factors and skillfully move parties away from that factor, from those factors, so that they can have a clear field. You know, it's like an airplane that is flying. The airplane will take off. It will go through turbulence, through clouds, through storms, until it reaches a point where it is clean and clear and it can be at cruise level. That is the skill that the mediator must have. Now, let me anticipate a few questions after this and therefore give an answer. I've said many things, and I know that people are going to ask me, so how do you do this? How do you do this? I'm not here to teach. I'm just here to speak to you about some of these things. So I won't go into those details, trust me. There'll be opportunities where people have to explore those things. Fola mentioned something which I think is particularly relevant to the course you're taking, and that is the value chain. This much I will tell you though, free of charge. Everything we do, whether law practice, whether agriculture, whether real estate development, has its own value chain. And whoever is going to market services or products in any of those fields must know, number one, what is that value chain, and number two, what is their value proposition. I can tell you this free of charge. The value proposition of mediation is not that it saves people going to court, because there are many people who are prepared to go to court for 20 years. The value proposition of mediation is not that it saves time. Some people, in fact, want to not save time. So that's not the value. It's not always the value proposition. The value proposition of mediation is not always that it saves the people money. Some people are so wealthy that what they're spending on their case is peanuts. In fact, they want to spend it because they're going to get a tax break from it. So you need to sit down and find what the value proposition is. What is it that you say to people that has value that makes them choose mediation? In fact, let me say this, even in the process of mediation itself, one of the keys to bringing parties to settlement is making a value proposition to them of the benefits of settling versus going to court. Now, old school, the former philosophers have put it different way. You've heard things like Batna, Watna. I put it very simple. I put it a little simpler. My own definition of it is not Batna or Watna. I just say there's a value proposition. There's a value in settling. Help them to understand what that value is to them. With CEDA training, and my dear colleague, Mrs. Kolade, is a CEDA specialist. They knew about CEDA before some of us knew that CEDA existed. You know, it's so funny. So I thought CEDA was just cedar tree until we met some of them, and they told us that CEDA is a Center for Effective what is that? Dispute resolution. Okay. Now they talk of underlying interests and things like that. Yeah, that's true. Those things are important. Underlying interests, fundamental needs. But what is most important is how you get there. And when I was referring to CEDA, they teach us things like reality testing. Let me tell you something you may not hear anywhere else. Those things are not meant to be things you throw on the table when you're mediating. They are things that are meant to be at the back of your mind. So you don't start telling the parties in a mediation, well, let's do some reality testing here. Excuse me, you've given yourself away. Once you tell the people, if they're intelligent enough, that, okay, well, let's do some reality testing here, what happens? They put up their guard, and there is no testing and there's no reality. The second thing, please, I beg you, don't go and say mediation is party-driven. That is a cliche that is
what I'm talking about.
This is a cliche that is beginning to not just annoy me, it's actually irritating to me. And by the way, Mediation is not party-driven. Okay, please don't join the bandwagon with all those cliches. Because when you keep that background, and the third thing I'll say along that same line is, first of all, let me ask, I know there are 24 participants here. If I take Fola, Mrs. Kolade, and myself out, I'll leave 21 of us. Now, of the 21 of us remaining, how many of us are lawyers? Okay. Fola, can you give me a quick guess? Of the 21 people, how many are lawyers?
Like 15?
15? Right.
No, 19.
19. Okay.
Yes.
Fine. Okay. Thank you very much for the. Yeah, that was a good idea to have put up the hands. Please lower the hands. Now, the lawyer who has been engaged by a client to represent his client has a job to do, doesn't he? He has to earn his income too. He has to earn his brief. He believes in what he's doing. And it always pains me that lawyers who are mediators think that it is the height of their power to boast, oh, me, I normally send lawyers out of my mediation. What do you gain by that? It actually reflects that you are not a good mediator. Because it was a mediator friend of mine who told me that a mediator must be like a symphony orchestra conductor. What do I mean by that? Look at a symphony orchestra. You have big double bass. That's how you even have a bass saxophone, you have timpanis, you have trombones, you have bassoons. On the other hand, you have other delicate sounding instruments like the violins, the second violins, you have the violas, you have even sometimes have a piano if it's a piano concerto, and so on and so forth. And you have different instruments that have different sounds that are concordant. But every one of them is essential to producing a beautiful symphony sound. It takes two things. The people playing the different instruments need to be guided and to have been schooled, either through having gone to music school, and when they come under the conductor of the orchestra, he guides them as to what he wants. Cool down there, a little quiet there, let's go this quickly, let's bend down, drums, bring it down, and so on and so forth. And he gets them, and at the end of the day, though they are all different instruments with different sounds and with different qualities, the job of the orchestra conductor is to bring them all to sound as one beautiful coordinated sound. You know who that orchestra conductor is? The mediator. That is your job. Your job is not to say, I don't like that double bass sound, please, will you get out of the orchestra, please? And look, you, Mr. Bazoon, your voice, your sound is so deep. Look, what I need are nice sounds, flute. If you send them out, the symphony will not be correct. It will not be complete. So you must learn the art of using people. I didn't say manipulating them. And that is where, if you remember what I said at the beginning, this is where humility comes in. There are many times I've sat down in a mediation, and Mrs. Kolade knows this because we exchange a lot of anecdotes. And she knows that many times I wait until the young man or the young woman have sprouted up and down as to how they are 33 years at the bar, and all the time they've been doing this, and I just wait, I listen, and they make all the noise, and they okay, fine. And then I just nicely and quietly let them know that, oh well, I can understand the way you feel, because I remembered when I was in the law school in 1976, and I realized that usually after that, there's a new sense of humility that comes over them. do that. But that is just on a lighter note. On a more practical note, if you are going to be a good mediator, then you must be able to get 9 out of 10. There will always be the impossible exception. But it has something to do with this being a lawyer. It's actually a personality thing. And one of the things that I always look at is, right from the beginning of my mediations, I put my arms around the lawyers. I remembered once a lawyer who told me he's a mediator. I know the thing is party driven, so he's going to let his his client speak. And I said, well, I really hate that expression, party driven. You've been paid to do a job. If your client is saying something that you think is incomplete, I will be looking to you to help the client. Oh, it immediately put him in a sense of, oh, so I have a use here. And for the rest of that mediation, he paid a lot of attention and he was constantly helping us to fill in the gaps. And before we knew it, he was my co-mediator. Those are some of the skills that we need to have. I think I will stop there and take a few questions. If that's yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Akinsanya. And as always, there's always a lot to be learned from you. So like I told them, it's not exactly, they're not here to train us, but just to give 1 or 2 words and all that. But one question I'm going to pose, ask you, Mr. Akinsanya, and I would also ask the same question to Mrs. Kolade, is this. Given what you know now, and as far as the business and practice of mediation is concerned, in terms of age, in terms of experience, in terms of a lot of things, what do you know now that you wish you knew much earlier that would probably have helped you out that would have probably made it faster? I don't know, for want of a better way to put it, but the things that you know now that you wish you knew earlier on, for want of a better way to put it, given what you know about mediation today. Probably when you started off the first 1 or 2 years, if you had done this or done that, you probably would have shortened the number of years it would have taken you to get to X, Y, Z and all of that, so that the younger mediators can also more or less learn from it. So I'll start off with Mr. Akinsanya, then take Mrs. Kolade.
They actually say ladies first.
Oh, okay. Okay, then let me take Mrs. Kolade then.
Mr. Akinsanya, please go ahead.
Okay, before I go ahead, I need to do something. Since we are talking of when we were young and when we are old, I must recognize at least a senior sister of mine, elder sister of mine, who is in this gathering. She won't like me to say that, and that is Mrs. Funmilayo Garrick.
Oh yes.
And when you are talking of humility, I think, without patronizing her, it's not easy for a lawyer of her experience and the things that she had achieved in practice and in personal life to sit under a follower to be taught. It takes humility. And so I commend her, and I see in her at least that quality, but I also want to take the opportunity to let her know that I see you, I recognize you, I salute you, man. Okay? Now,
thank you very much.
Oh, and I must also add, like I said,
Mrs. Kolade.
Yeah, Miss Garrick has been, she has
been session. Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
So Ms. Garrick has also been a pillar of silent support. She came for my first training. She's always there for a lot of things I do, and she be here. So I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. So what do I know? I'll be honest with you. It may sound strange that there is not much that I'll say I wish I had known. In fact, what I wish I had known is rather down to earth. I wish I had known that mediation existed as an actual practice. Because when I was working in mobile producing Nigeria, we had a practice. In fact, I've mentioned this once before, that when we had our orientation, I started work with Mobile Oil Corporation in New York, the E&P division in New York. And the orientation for new associates, for new associate lawyers in the what was called the Office of General Counsel, one of the main courses I'm looking for, one of the main topics I think that we did was something called the learning how to carry out a cost-benefit analysis of any legal dispute with the company, and only taking a decision to fight or not fight a matter, or the extent to which you fight, having done a cost-benefit analysis. We were always told you must not take on a case simply because you think you have the name of Mobile at stake. The name of Mobile is too big now to be tarnished by anyone. Therefore, it doesn't cost you anything to compromise if need be. And that attitude was taken with respect to dealing with our host communities in Eket, Akwa Ibom, in Kwaibo, in Port Harcourt, in Bonny, and in all the things we did. So if there's one thing I know, I wish I had known, is that in fact what we were doing at that time, I wish I had mediation skills. I wish I knew there was something called mediation. I probably would have become a mediator much earlier. So I don't think it really fits into the question you asked, but really, that is what I wish I knew. Sometimes I open the books. I remember when I first became accredited, I used to think I was somebody special. And then I'll open a book and you'll find somebody who's been practicing mediation since 1983. And I said, okay. Then somebody said, oh, when I did my first mediation in 1971, So this thing has been around. How come I didn't know about it? How come I didn't hear about it? In my third year in university, I did an elective in my third year. It was called ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution. What did they teach us? Arbitration. So I think the eye-opener for me is that I wish I had known that mediation as a practice was possible much earlier. I would have wanted to have seen it develop much further within our environment here and help to make it even bigger and more rewarding than it is now. That is what I know now that I wish I had known maybe 25, 30 years ago.
Wow. Thank you. Okay, over to you, Ms. Kolade. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. What is it that I knew? I'm going to be very honest. I wish I had known how to make money from mediation when I started out. I wish I had known how to make money from it. You know, when we started out, we did a lot of frisbees, for want of a better word, you know, and I just had the passion for it. I really didn't know how to turn it into money until, subsequent years, because at the time I went to England and I did an LLM in dispute resolution. That's the way it was coined, LLM in dispute resolution. There were just 4 of us in the class. It was, very, very new. And, that's when we met Sida and all these people. But they didn't really teach us, how to make money from it. They taught it as a skill that you could add to your legal skills, that you could use if, the occasion warranted it or if you had the opportunity. But they never really told us how to make money from it. And so I didn't really know how to make money for it for years. So that's what I would have loved to have known when I started out.
Wow, thank you so much. So I'm now going to start off with Mrs. Kolade again and come back to Mr. Akinsanya. Now, what are the first of all, it's two-legged because your response to the first will determine the response to the second. Is mediation the future? Is mediation the future? And if yes, is the future now? Do you think mediation is the future of dispute resolution? And if yes, is the future now? And what are the telltale signs if the response to the first question is in the affirmative to make you know that, okay, fine. Yes, we've gotten to that point in time when mediation would take its pride of place as a preferred means of dispute resolution. What are the telltale signs that you think you're seeing, both from the angle of lawyers and the end users, to make you know that, okay, fine, they are now becoming more receptive to it, and in the not too distant future, if you think it's the future, it would now be greatly accepted?
Yes, I said it, when I started talking, that mediation is the future. And really, it would be very unwise for anybody not to hop onto the bus. Why do I say this? It's just the simplicity of the process and the fact that a lot of people can see the value. Okay, they can see the value in going through a mediation. And like I also mentioned, even when you do not settle the impasse in a mediation, it runs something through you, especially if it's done very well. You don't come out of mediation the same person. It does something to you, and that's something I believe is for good. It's never bad. It's for good. So I think mediation, to that extent, is the future. Then in terms of other dispute resolution processes, whether it's litigation, whether it's arbitration, people are getting tired. I'm an arbitrator, so I really cannot, I'd love to still do some arbitrations, but it's so expensive. There's no way around it. Arbitration is expensive. At least it's not as expensive as mediation. And companies and the users, let me say the end users, are beginning to complain. They're beginning to complain to us that, look, this arbitration is as a dispute resolution process is too expensive. So, and it's very, very difficult. Arbitrators don't want to change. Even when they tell you, oh, they're doing small claims arbitration, it's still more expensive than mediation. And yet you achieve the same result, if not even better, with mediation. So how can there not be a future in it? How can it not overtake? Then with litigation, we know what litigation is like, especially here in our country. The frustrations, I mentioned, earlier that a colleague of mine told me that to get a date in Supreme Court now is probably not until, 2027 or something like that, just to get a date for you to file your processes. I mean, those involved in the transaction or in the impasse would probably be long gone by the time the lawyer finally gets a date. So, I see a real future for mediation, and I believe that it's going to take over. My only worry is that as we progress, or as mediation catches on, that we don't lose the process itself. And that's where that word authentic, Mr. Akinsanya and I always discuss it, and I'm always going on about authentic. That is, do it the way it's meant to be done, so that you can achieve what it is that you set out to achieve. And there's so many things around it. Mr. Akinsanya mentioned humility. Yes. I mentioned being patient. If you're a mediator, you need a lot of patience. He's mentioned humility, which again is also a very, very good point, because we have some mediators that think that they're judges. They come into the mediation and they just want to be telling you, do this, telling the parties, do this, you can't do this. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to get it. This is mediation. This is not court. And you're going to miss a lot of things that the parties would otherwise have thrown up to you to help you. A lot of things that they would have said, a lot of actions they would have taken that would have helped the mediator. If you're too arrogant, you're not going to see all that, which again is another aspect of communication. You remember I mentioned that communication is key. So that is my answer to that.
No, thank you so much, Mrs.
Mrs.
Kolade.
The second leg, I think
okay.
you had a second leg.
Yes, no, I asked if you're saying mediation is the future, so that means the future has not arrived. So that's actually what I was trying to get with that.
The future has arrived, but it has just not been embraced totally. But it will be. It will be. It will be, because it's catching on. It will be.
So it's no longer a question of if, but a question of when. If I get it clearly.
Yes.
Okay then. Thank you so much, Ma. Okay, so Mr. Akinsanya, can I get your reaction to the same question?
Yes, and I'm going to give a bit of history for those who may care to know about it. Remember the law courts in England? We had a common law system, aren't we? You know, you had the courts, and they administered law. At a certain point in time, it became clear to the courts, it became clear to law that you cannot do all things strictly based on law. And in those days, you couldn't start a matter unless you could establish the basis for a writ. And if you didn't have that, you didn't get justice. And that was beginning to affect most people. So what happened? Came in the transfer courts, came in the introduction of equity. And what was equity beginning to teach us? That there's a lot more to a matter, there's a lot more to a situation than just the law. So, some of the maxims of equity. He who comes to equity must come with clean hands. He who comes to equity must do equity. And so on and so forth. That, for me, was the beginning of an evolution of recognizing that strictly law is incapable of resolving man's issues. In the early 50s, when we had the introduction of the equitable principle of estoppel, before then you had just legal estoppel. Then Lord Denning, then Master of the Rolls, introduced the equitable principle of estoppel in the famous High Trees case. And there, we all know, if I can just quickly give the facts, I'll try to summarize it without losing the essence. A landlord gave property out to a person, and they had an agreed rent. Now, according to law, all real estate contracts of that nature, whether to be made or to be amended or to be enforced, needed to be by deed. If they were not by deed, it was absolutely null and void, unenforceable ab initio. Now, a man who was earning, and I'll use fictitious numbers, who was getting, say, £40 a year and was being paid yearly for rent at the time of the Second World War, and he wanted to go to the United States with his family, went to the tenants and said to them, look, I need to travel. I need to get out of here with my family. How much is your rent? They say £40. Said, okay, look, you know what? If you pay me £25 and you pay me 5 years, that is even £125, you can have 5 years rent. Pay me now and I'll go. So they paid him the £125 and he went off to the United States. The war ended a little sooner than he thought. War ended in 1945. He came back. Now, as soon as he came back, smart man, he goes to the tenants. Excuse me, you owe me £40 for each year. You owe me a balance of £15 on each year. The guy said, but you told us that we could, if we paid you £25 a year for 5 years, we could have the place for 5 years at £25. He said, yes, I know, but the law says if it is not by deed, it is not enforceable. And at the first court of first instance, it was upheld. The law is the law. If you did not do it by deed, it is not recognizable by law, and so on and so forth. And it came before Lord Denning, and he then said, true, the law is the law, but you made a promise, and in reliance on your promise, this man put himself to detriment. He found £125 when he needed only to have found £40. We are not saying the law is now invalid. We are not saying the law is now repealed. We are saying that you, gentlemen, sir, we will stop you from enforcing your legal right. Now, if you see where I'm going to, now that is beginning to sound like mediation. Now you're getting to the real issue there. It says, yeah, the law is the law. But you know what? There is something present in the circumstances that is more important than the law. There's something that's more important as to who is right or wrong according to the law. That is what mediation is about. And so what I see is coming to play is that mediation is yet another step forward in the continuing evolution of the law to become more realistic, to become more applicable in a realistic way to human transactions and relationships and activities. So in that regard, therefore, I will very boldly say that mediation is the future. Now, is the future here? No, I don't think it's quite here right now. But I think it's close enough. And I think we can accelerate it. And one of the ways to accelerate it is if people going out there will begin more than ever before to practice authentic mediation. That is what gives mediation value. That is what makes it attractive. That is what will make people see the benefit of it. Yes, I believe the future is in front of us. I don't think it's quite here yet. There's a little bit of turbulence that we're going to go through. The litigators are resisting us. Yes, because you're taking out, if mediation becomes too popular, it reduces their importance. The arbitrators are fighting us. I just heard now, and Mrs. Kolade might be able to tell me that now there's a new thing in arbitration. If you start an arbitration and they've told you what the cost of the arbitration is, even if you stopped and said, look, please, you know what, we have decided we want to seek a private settlement, we want to try and do mediation to sort it, they say that's your business, you still have to pay arbitration fees. People actually get trapped into arbitration. And I said to myself, oh, if there's any reason why I may end up joining CIAB or NICAB, it's because I want to go in there and fight that, note my words and I use it advisedly, that nonsense. It is based on a covetous spirit. It is avaricious. It has no basis whatsoever. And the thing is, rather than adjust their own practices, they want to use their clout. But you know what? Nothing ever lasts. So these areas, now I think we are in the remaining throes. There was a time that the major thing against mediation was to say, oh, mediation, is not enforceable. It was so obviously wrong. And they knew it, and yet they were saying it because they wanted to promote arbitration. But this is normal. Arbitrators will fight us. Litigators will fight us. Even the judiciary will fight us, because then it takes something away from the mystique around judges. Because the judges will no longer have the power of be all and end all. A little small mediator who didn't even go to law school will be capable of resolving millions of dollars of a commercial transaction. No, they can't bear that. But I believe that none of those oppositions will last forever. They are just the birth throes. With due respect to my ladies who are present, you know how it is when you're giving birth to a baby. The last few moments, the pain is hard. There's screaming and shouting and there's a pain, but you know what? The baby will come. Mediation will be born. It will come, it will take its own place. And all the people that are struggling and groaning and making the noise, they will calm down. Maybe when the baby is born, 1 hour, 2 hours, 1 day later, the pain is gone. We will all become friends. They will learn to understand us. Now, one thing I want to say though, mediators, let us be careful too, so that we're not in the same fault. Mediation can never be monolithic. It cannot be the sole way. it has to be an important alternative. Not ADR, it has to be an alternative stream. So there will always be a place for litigation. There'll always be a place for arbitration properly practiced. I'm sorry to say, I heard from very authentic sources that many arbitrators don't even read pleadings. They don't even do all the work that they are supposed to do. There are some good arbitrators, there are some excellent arbitrators, but there are many that are there only because of the money now. If we all begin to clean our houses, I want to see not just every market woman or every businessman become a mediator. I want to see real, true, authentic mediators. I want to see real, true, authentic arbitrators, and there are authentic arbitrators. And I want to see really good judges. I give you an example now of the Lord Denning, people like McNaughton and the rest of them in those days. In Nigeria, we had people in their heydays like J.I.C. Taylor. We had a lot of all those real judges that were judges. And I want to also see a situation where we get real mediators, authentic mediators. We will all exist side by side, complementing one another, achieving the overall objective of making justice available to the people.
Wow, thank you so much. So we're going to take the final question for today. Before
Fola, before I take the final question, I just needed to say just one little thing concerning what Mr. Akinsanya has just said. Well, at the end of your talk, Mr. Akinsanya, you did say that we are all going to have to learn to live with each other, that is litigators, arbitrators, mediators. That's one thing that I wanted to emphasize. And also maybe to disagree with you that mediation has not arrived yet, or that it will not be the future. I think it
No. I didn't say it will not be the future. What I'm saying is that future is imminent. We are working towards it. That's why I use the analogy of childbirth. The pregnancy has come to term. The labor has begun. But I don't think it is right now. There are still many more things that need to be put in place. But is it the future? Yes, it is the future, but it is not here now. Because there are two legs to the question. They said, is it the future, and is the future now? Answer one, it is the future. Answer two is very, very close, but not quite yet. Sorry, I just wanted to make that clarification. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. And just to, in my own opinion, that even when eventually, mediation takes root and, a lot of people want to, use it and all that, we're still going to have to live side by side, operate side by side with the other means of dispute resolution. I mean, you can't take away litigation, and arbitration will still be there for those who can afford it, and for some particular cases, because arbitration, I think, mostly depends on the end users. Those who use arbitration know why they're using arbitration, especially the big corporations and, the very complex technical transactions. They know why they use arbitration. So we'll always still have it. We'll all just have to learn to live, side by side. But then I believe mediation will be the giant amongst all three.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So my final question before I go back to the teaching. Now, sir, the concept of authentic mediation is always something I say, but I don't know whether we can actually subsume it under authentic mediation. Ultimately, we're all taught mediation. We all know it's an amicable way of resolving disputes without a formal system. But ultimately, each tribe, each culture, each country would have to come up with its own unique way of resolving disputes. To the effect that a mediator trained in the UK, who understands the tenets of UK and culture, if it comes to a Nigeria to want to resolve disputes based on some issues, like probably something as mundane as probably calling somebody far older than him by first name and all of that, might one way or the other affect dispute resolution. The point I'm just trying to make out of all of this is that Fine, we might be taught the general principles of dispute resolution, but ultimately, we have to come up with our own unique mediation of a unique way of resolving disputes. I'm almost tempted to use the word authentic, because ultimately that is what it is. When if Nigeria comes up with its own unique way of resolving dispute, which is authentic to Nigeria, the UK comes up with its own unique way of resolving dispute. Can what I just explained, can this fall under the ambit of unique of authentic mediation, or would you rather give it a different name? Because I'm looking at the etymology of the word authentic. Authentic means original. And there are so many factors that may make someone abroad struggle with resolving an issue here that might not necessarily be unseen. But ultimately, the way we Africans resolve our own dispute, I think it's almost different from the way they resolve their disputes over there. Some of the certain things they put into play, if we decide to start incorporating it here, it might not really work so well. We look at the issue of evaluative, facilitative. Sometimes we might even need to have a hybrid of some sort when we resolve disputes and all of that. So these are things I feel that if we are really going to make progress, we have to come up with our own unique way. But the question is, can what I explained in view of how Mr. Akinsanya defines authentic mediation, can it be subsumed under authentic mediation? I'll go with Mrs. Kolade first before I take Mr. Akinsanya.
Well, for me, I think what you've said is another way of looking at authenticity. Okay, because what you're saying is that, you know, when we're practicing mediation, we need to take into consideration maybe faith, religion,
culture, especially culture,
yes. Yeah, culture, and so many other things. Yes, it plays a part. It plays a part sometimes, and you need to be mindful of it, especially if it's going to affect the end result. Okay, that is a skill and a consideration that I think the mediator that is involved in the mediation will probably have to look at and then, you know, take a decision. But in terms of authentic mediation, what I have in my head about authentic mediation and the practice of mediation is that we carry out mediation the way it's meant to be carried out. And what is that way? It's meant to be a process that will achieve certain results, okay? And when those results are not being achieved, then it's not being practiced properly. For want of a better word, it's just, you know, practicing it properly. Practicing it properly to achieve what it's designed to achieve, okay? Maybe I can give an example. If like Mr. Akinsanya mentioned the issue of reality testing. Reality testing is not something you tell your participants in the or your parties in the mediation that, okay, now I'm going to reality test you, you know, and then you start to talk. No, it's something that you as a mediator, you're supposed to hold on to and use when you see the way the parties are going, or when you believe that one party is, you know, just living a dream or living a lie and hopes to be able to, you know, reap something from this mediation. That's where, you know, the word authentic for me becomes very, because you see, if you don't do it properly, in fact, that's the best word I can use. You know, if you don't do carry out the process properly, you're not going to achieve what you were hoping to achieve. And then people will turn around and say, oh, mediation doesn't work. They didn't settle, they didn't. But what happened during the mediation? Was the mediator patient enough? Did the mediator ask the right questions? Did the mediator communicate well enough? You know, did the parties have an understanding of, why they're at mediation? Do they have an understanding of why they needed to concede? You know, did the mediator listen to all listen to all that the parties have said and then try to, you know, harmonize everything? Was he able to push the parties, you know, to see where they should be moving to, all these kind of things. That's authentic mediation. If you don't have all those things present, then you're not practicing mediation. You're not supposed to come as a mediator and be telling parties, okay, you go and do this, you go and do this, or you do some things that I hear some mediators do, things that, you shouldn't even do in mediation at all. There lies the authenticity. But what you have said, like I said, is another aspect of it. I don't know whether you can subsume one with the other, I don't know, but it's another aspect of it, which you can, you will need to take into consideration. But then again, you have to be very, very careful. There's some things that, people you do in mediation, which, if you're not experienced, and if you haven't done quite a lot of mediations and seen, reactions and experienced reactions and things like that, you just might get it wrong. It just might backfire. So that's why you have to be very careful. So things like, the faith, the culture and all that, you have to be very, very careful. And it has to be done with experience. Okay. That's my take.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, sir. You're on mute, sir. Okay.
Thank you. Now, again, I want to say this about authentic. Everything that Mrs. Kolade has said is right. Maybe if I move it from that point forward, is to say that those qualities that she has referred to are qualities that can be fulfilled in any culture. Now, the cultural aspect of it is the methods of achieving them. Let me explain to you what I mean again by authentic. Authentic mediation is mediation where the parties, the power of resolution lies in the parties. Let me give an example. Many of us watch Nollywood anyway, which is an imperfect representation of African culture, by the way. But sometimes they try to represent what happens in a king's palace, and people come before the king and they say, this one has done this, one has done this. They say, well, or they come before a council of elders. And when the elders listen to both sides, the elders say, look, go and do this, go and do that. And people say, well, see, we've always had mediation in Africa. And I said, no, that is not mediation. That is conciliation. There are many methods of resolving disputes to be found in every culture. But the fact that they are methods of resolving the disputes outside a courtroom litigation or arbitration does not mean arbitration. In other words, mediation is not dispute resolution minus litigation and arbitration. No, it's not everything else except litigation and arbitration. Mediation must contain certain qualities. I've mentioned them. I don't want to waste your time by re-emphasizing them, but the most important, the power of resolution must be with the parties. Number two, they are resolved without necessarily giving place to what is right or wrong. Mediation allows you to recognize and to promote other interests, other values, other than what is right or wrong, or rather than what are the legalities of the matter. I believe, again, let me do a little bit of legal history for those who are lawyers. In law, especially when we study jurisprudence, we're told that there's something called the grand norm. The grand norm is that concept, it's like, I think it was that Carlson or so, I think, who said that at the root of everything in society or in relationships, there are some basic fundamental truths. For example, there is hardly any culture that allows you to walk along the street, take out your knife and kill your neighbor. Whether it's Indian, whether it is Afghanistan, whether it's Russian, whether it's Yoruba, whether it is Biu, no matter who you are, there are just certain basic norms. There are certain basic philosophies. There are certain things that are just fundamental. I believe the process that allows the parties themselves to have the power of the resolution of their disputes is, in my opinion, one of such fundamentals. And that is what separates mediation from the rest of alternative dispute resolution or of dispute resolution processes. When in every other form of dispute resolution, whether it's a village council of elders, whether it is the town council, whether it was the Greek assemblies in the day, or the Roman senates and so on and so forth in those days, all of those ones, one thing characterizes them. Somebody takes a decision, somebody enforces it, and if there's a case where somebody may not like what is said but has no choice but to abide by it. Therefore, by whatever name you call it, that is not mediation. So I want to make it clear that mediation is fundamental. Now, how you do it, let me give you a simplistic example. We don't have to conduct mediation in English. You can conduct mediation in the native language. I have used in mediation, I remembered once I've had to use Yoruba because the people were Yoruba speaking, and speaking English was just making it difficult for them to even understand what was going on. So I went into English. There was once when I had to go and look for an Igbo friend of mine to come and please come and help me speak Igbo, come and hear. But the principle is still the same. The power of resolution must lie in the parties, and the mediator will not make a decision for them, but the mediator will help them see a little beyond what they are seeing. That is the skill of a mediator. You help them to see beyond where they are. There's an example in scripture, although I always say that it is really not mediation as such, but in hindsight, it is mediation. Remember when Solomon, the king of Israel, was asked to mediate between two women?
Okay. And I was going to
At the end, he gave a judgment. But in reality, who made the decision? The women themselves.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. And what he did, by saying, go and bring a knife for me, let's cut the baby, we give one half of the living baby to this person, one half of the living baby to this person. What he did was he forced them. That was a reality testing. So the true mother now said, in no hurry that. You know what? Let her have the baby. So Solomon had actually, that gesture he did was a means, it was a channel by which he returned the power of resolution to the people. So they took the decision, and he then, I think he played two roles. He mutated from a mediator into an ADR judge, because then they now brought their settlement to him and he said, right, go and give the live baby for she is indeed the mother. In other words, we had found the truth. The parties themselves had made the decision. So that is a long-winded answer to your question. If I could summarize it, it is this. The culture or no culture, all that will happen is there'll be cultural shades, cultural flavors to it, but the fundamental principle will be preserved, that the parties will retain the power of resolution. and it will always be their decision. And I tell you this, there's an increasing number of mediations, not just in Nigeria, that are being challenged. There was one famous one that came out of Singapore in which they challenged the mediation agreement on the basis of non est factum. In fact, that case which I studied is what made me develop the principle of authentic mediation. Because when I followed some of the things that it realized that if you don't allow the parties to own their decision, they might, because they are tired, they've come to 5 mediations and said, okay, we settle, okay. So you say, oh, all right, okay, great. They agree, but they're not happy. Why? It is not their decision. It is not their resolution. Authentic mediation empowers the parties. And that can be done in any language, in any culture. And when it is done in any language, in any culture, that, simply put, is authentic mediation.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Akinsanya. Thank you so much, Mrs. Kolade. It's been awesome. It's been insightful. It's been knowledgeable. It's been mind-blowing, to say the least. And I don't take any of this for granted, because I know what would have cost for me to get the duo of Mr. Akinsanya and Mrs. Kolade under one roof. Oh, Jesus!
I'm waiting for my bank alert. I'm waiting for my alert.
I honestly don't take this for granted, and this is also part of the mentorship I keep telling people about. Once you show the right disposition and you show the right attitude, people would always help. But at the end of the day, what are you bringing to the table? Thank you so much, Mr. Akinsanya. Thank you so much, Mrs. Kolade, for these words of wisdom, and I truly appreciate this. So thank you. I don't know. Is there any final word from Mr. Akinsanya and Mrs. Kolade before we go back to our training? Just to everyone listening to you right now, before we go back. Oh, sorry, I muted Mr. Akinsanya. So sorry, sir.
But I'll just say this, that for as many of you that are here, Fola has my contact details. Ask him about the Dispute Solutions Hub, TDSH.
Oh, sorry, in 1 second, sir, can you just briefly tell them what this is all about, sir? So that they can at least have a bit of idea, then I'll just put more context into it, since we're talking about it now.
Well, the Dispute Solutions Hub is being set up as, in fact, a home of authentic mediation. It is meant to be a place. It is already set up, and we're beginning to establish it as a mediation center and also a place for nurturing the practice of authentic mediation. And so, as time goes on, you'll find that it becomes an alternative. For those of you who will be doing private mediations, parties don't always want to come to your office, and they may not always want you to take them to LMDC or some other more public domain. Well, TDSH will be that alternative for persons. And the idea within TDSH also is that it will focus a lot on a very mature, very seasoned mediators, so that even those who participate in TDSH, whether as an associate or as a member of its round table, will actually be a sort of institutional mentorship for them. It will be a real training ground for building up the skills and the practice of authentic mediation. And we hope that ultimately TDSH, which at the moment is still it's a small outfit in Lekki Phase 1. It's actually homed in my office at the moment, but Mrs. Kolade is one of our directors, and there are several other very highly experienced seasoned mediators who are associated with us, and it is going to be a home. It's going to be a place where people will practice authentic mediation. Put it firmly, like people talk of Harvard or Oxford, whatever it is, when you begin to talk of the practice of mediation, TDSH, the Dispute Solutions Hub, is intended to become a flag bearer in that regard.
Okay, very quickly, sir, before I go to Mrs. Kolade, what happens to the endorsement of the terms of settlement? Is there like a nexus between that and a court if they want to take it a step further into making it the consent judgment?
Okay, well, I'll try and put it as briefly as possible. I've always been a bit disturbed because people have now made it seem as if unless you take it to LMDC or unless you have a court-connected thing, you cannot endorse your terms of settlement. That is not right. It is not correct. Even without LMDC, even without court connection, even without court annexation, if two parties along the street enter into an agreement and they sign it and they want it to be enforceable against each other as a judgment, there is a process you follow. You go into the court of law, you take out an originating summons. And when you take out your originating summons, you will file your terms of settlement as your pleadings. You will come before the judge on a hearing notice, and you will plead as your terms, your settlement, and the judge will pass it, will make a judgment. For example, you could take out an originating summons on a contract and say, even on a contract already signed, and say, well, please tell us, does this contract not say that this man should pay me so much, so? And the judge can rule on the basis of that contract, just on what it says, on an originating summons. And that is one thing in a court of law, that if they brought an objection against your filing on the basis of jurisdiction because it's something to do with the company, the judge will tell them, this is not it is not a matter of company law, it's a matter of contract law, and he has jurisdiction. And I've tested a case like that before, and we have succeeded up to Court of Appeal. It hasn't been tested at Supreme Court, but I suspect the reason why they did not go further was because it was clear that in fact the Court of Appeal were very angry with the fact that appeal was coming at all. So this is part of the rivalry that I was talking about. There seems to have been this conscious effort to discourage people. Mediation, you can't enforce it. Mediation, no, it's just for small matters. Oh, you can't do complex matters. No. If you did your mediation, let's say you are doing what we call private mediation, and you wanted to do it in a place that gives it some sort of some formality, yes, and you had it at TDSH. Now, what the advantage you'll get is that TDSH, if you want, can assign to you one of its own mediators, or you can simply use the place for your mediation at a fee. Although, to be allowed to use it, there will be processes that for what we call quality control. But if you do get your mediation settled there, you just simply do one of three things. You can either go to the High Court directly, take out originating summons, as I said, and get it enforced, or you can go to LMDC or any court-connected ADRs, and you can do that in any of the multi-door courthouses and get it received as your mediation settlement agreement and passed on to the ADR judge, and you'll get your judgment. Or parties can simply make it a poll deed between them that makes it absolutely enforceable, and therefore, again, you can go to court and enforce it by an action for breach of contract, if not enforced. So let's get out of the illusion that it is only if we are court connected that you can do mediation. If you did mediation in your own office, you can enforce it. But what a TDSH offers you is that, well, maybe the office will seem too informal. Then you can do it in a TDSH, and you'll give it a little bit more of an institutional background. Okay.
Wow. Thank you so much. And we all learn every day. I'm just learning this for the first time today too. So thank you so much. So Mr. Kolade,
You are privileged to be hearing this for the first time.
I'm privileged to be hearing this for the first time. I've always assumed that if you have to endorse the terms of settlement into consent judgment, it has to be at the LMDs. Honestly, I'm just hearing this for the first time. It never occurred to me that we could actually still go back to the regular court and file an originating summons to still endorse it without an ADR judge. I'm just learning this for the first time. We all learn every day. Thank you so much. So, Mrs. Kolade, your final words before we continue. Thank you so much.
I'd just like to say thank you to everybody for listening. I hope we were able to bring some value to your time.
Wow, so much.
I'd like to say that passion goes a long way, and I look forward to working with any one of you in future.
Thank you so much, man.
I want to see you all in practice.
Yes, so
practice of mediation.
And I totally associate myself with those sentiments and with those thanks. And I say personal thanks to Mrs. Kolade herself.
Thank you so much.
I have learned a lot from her.
You know what's amazing is how sometimes both of you don't agree on a particular point, but somehow, some way, there's a way you actually. I like the way you appreciate your differences. Where even if Mrs. Kolade does not entirely agree 100% with Mr. Akinsanya, somehow, some way, it's always like there's an agreement. They go like this, you go like this. It's such an amazing friendship. I can't think of how best to say it.
It's called mediation. It's called mediation.
Mediation, exactly. And Nang Chang, I'm looking forward to you hosting us in Kaduna. I want to come to Kaduna, and then they will say, "Oh, there's one super mediator somewhere, Mr. Nang Chang," and then I can say yes. That's my person.
Nang Chang is someone that has actually stood out in terms of the determination, the drive towards mediation. You know one thing about you always see them when you know them, and I trust that in the not too distant future, he will be able to make an impressive mark in Kaduna too. Yes. So thank you so much, everyone. And interestingly enough, let me